Shabbat Shalom. This Shabbat we read two Parshiot, Acharei and Kedoshim, and I want to share a few thoughts about Kedoshim because Parshat Kedoshim is at the heart of Sefer Vayikra, the middle of Sefer Vayikra, which is like the middle book of the Torah, and I think it could also be considered the heart of our very way of life, and perhaps this year more so than ever. The theme of Sefer Vayikra, the theme of the book of Leviticus, is holiness. And at the beginning of our book, holiness is something that takes place in the Mishkan, in the Mikdash, in the temple. We read about the sacrifices and how they are sanctified and then offered. We read about the Kohanim and the Leviim and how they are sanctified and given special roles. And in our Torah portion this week, the perspective all of a sudden expands, and we're told, Kedoshim tihiyu. God tells us, you shall be holy, for I, God, am holy. So now, who has to be holy? Everyone. When do we have to be holy? Always. Where do we have to be holy? Everywhere. How do we have to be holy? And I think there are two answers to that question. The first answer to that question is we are holy through the observance of mitzvot. And what type of mitzvot cultivate holiness? Well, if we just look at the verses that follow that command, we see an incredible potpourri of mitzvot that were we to sort them and classify them and categorize them, they would fall into every possible category of mitzvah that we find throughout the Torah. There are mitzvot that are ritual mitzvot about details of the sacrifices in the Beit HaMikdash. There are mitzvot which are interpersonal, relating to business affairs between people. There are mitzvot that are ethical, about how we think about one another and treat one another. There are mitzvot that are religious, about cultivating our own devotion to God. And all of these mitzvot are mixed together and interweaved in a way that defies sorting, defies categorization. And I think that is the point, that holiness, this demand to be holy everywhere, everyone, in every place, also means that we cultivate holiness and strive towards holiness through the entirety of our lives of Torah and mitzvot. All of them are with that goal. All of them are means of achieving that purpose. I think this year, this message is more relevant than ever. Holiness is not something that happens in shul, and community isn't just something that happens when we're all in the same place. Holiness happens in our homes as we cultivate our lives of mitzvot when we can't go to shul, and community is about our concern and care for one another, the things that we do for one another, even when we can't be in the same place. That's still community, and that holiness goal still remains before us. In the context of this call for holiness, we have the mitzvah of v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You shall love your fellow as yourself. Rabbi Akiva very famously says, Zeh klal gadol b'Torah. This is the major principle of the Torah, loving your fellow as yourself. And a lot of ink has been spilled to try to make sense of this mitzvah. How can we love somebody as much as we love ourselves? But the Torah doesn't say love your fellow as much as you love yourself. The Torah says kamocha, l'reacha kamocha. Show your fellow love in the ways that you appreciate love. This point was made very, very clearly by a 19th century rabbi, Rabbi Mecklenburg, in a book called Ketavei Kabbalah. He says that just as there's this pop psychology theory of the four love languages, so he says there are at least 9 love languages. There are ways in which we ourselves appreciate being loved, and the Torah is telling us that we have to demonstrate that same type of love to others. And that's what the mitzvah entails. So we all appreciate being treated with honesty and integrity. We appreciate when those ask how we're doing and inquire into our welfare. We appreciate when others offer solidarity when we suffer. We appreciate when people greet us in a friendly manner. These are the ways that we feel loved, and so we have to demonstrate towards others that same type of love. You have to l'reacha kamocha, show love to others in the same way that we appreciate love. This seems to me so relevant for this year as we are undergoing great hardship, staying in our homes as a way to protect others, but it's also a way of protecting ourselves. So are we protecting ourselves and in so doing protecting others, or are we protecting others and in so doing ourselves are being protected? It's all mutual. That mutuality of the public health is also reflecting the ethical mutuality of this mitzvah. That the ways that we appreciate being treated determines the contours of this mitzvah of how we treat others. So that's how we strive for holiness, even when some mitzvot are beyond our ability right now. We can't come to shul. We can't experience community, all of us being in the same place at the same time, but community is still here. We still devote ourselves towards caring for the community, and we still strive towards holiness. There's one final point that I'd like to make. This is another way in which we strive towards holiness, and this point is raised very powerfully and beautifully by Ramban, who points out that if holiness were the automatic outcome of mitzvot, the Torah would not have to tell us, be holy. It would just say, do mitzvot A, B, C, D, 613 mitzvot, and then the automatic outcome would be holiness. Ramban tells us that it's possible to check every box in a list of mitzvot and nonetheless fall through the cracks ethically, spiritually, and live a very debased, unholy life. And so Ramban tells us that we always have to ask, not just is this permitted or forbidden, not just is this kosher or not kosher. We also have to ask, will saying this, will doing this, will eating this lead towards more holiness or not? And there's a separate mitzvah to cultivate holiness, even when there's no particular mitzvah command governing my behavior in this particular instance. But for Ramban, this moving outside the law it's not moving beyond the law. It's not a lack of concern for the details of halakha and the details of mitzvot. For Ramban, it's only by studying the mitzvot and observing them and being very, very careful in how we observe them that we're able to intuit and try to think through in an effective and impactful way, how do I cultivate holiness in all moments of my life. It comes from within this devotion to the law that we're able to figure out that holiness is not limited by the law. Okay, the mitzvot are a floor, not a ceiling. Okay, so this demand from this week's parsha to be holy, it's for everyone, it's always, it's everywhere. And how do we do it? Well, we do it by observing the mitzvot and being devoted to the mitzvot that are of every different genre and every different variety and every different focus. And we also do it by going beyond the mitzvot and constantly striving towards holiness and asking ourselves, how can I increase the holiness in the world and the holiness in my life? I wish you all a Shabbat of holiness and Shabbat of rest. I'm going to miss the opportunity to see you all in shul, but I hope you have a safe, healthy, and really enjoyable Shabbat in your homes. Take care, everyone.